So there are three key pieces of research and thinking that I wanted to share with you about why I think compassion circles have the positive impacts that they seem to have, that our experience and the feedback that we get seems to tell us that they do have. One is a field of sociology called social constructionism. Those are big words, but essentially what it means is that we're processing the way we experience the world all the time. You know, we have way too much data to just kind of swallow it whole, so we process it before we store it as memory. And one of the ways that we process the way we experience the world is through conversations. That socially, interpersonally, we talk about our experiences, and part of how we lay down memory is we remember those conversations. So sometimes our memories of an event are not just once removed, i.e. there's the event and then there's our filtered version of it where we've filtered it out, the information we can manage to hold and then store that. But it's further filtered through, I then talk about it with my wife or a friend or a colleague, and then that conversation becomes part of how I store the memory of that event. So the way we experience, the really basic, fundamental way we experience the world is shaped by the conversations we have. So if I have a conversation about how difficult a day has been, I'll remember a difficult day. If I have a conversation about the gifts that a day has brought me, it may have been a difficult day, but my memories and the way I experience that day will be significantly different because of looking at it through a lens of appreciation. We're looking at it through different filters. So one of the contentions of social constructionism is that we shape our experience of the world through the conversations we have. Now, one of the ways that's been applied to organisations in particular is through a method called appreciative inquiry. It's quite a widely used now all around the world way of working with organisational development. And one of the phrases that's used in appreciative inquiry is that organisations move in the direction of the questions they ask. So if we're asking questions about problems, we're likely to find problems. If we're asking questions about what's working well, we'll find out what's working well. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't problems, but if we focus on them, the odds are we can get into a very negative spiral. Whereas if we focus on what's going well, there's a good chance that we can create a positive spiral, create more of that, and actually just edge out the problems by creating more of what's working. So to make that, help that be a little more practical, here's the second piece of research that feeds into that thinking, which is with sports teams. There's been quite a lot of studies with sports teams where they've got them watching videos of their last performance, like their last match, and spotting where they went wrong and trying to correct it. And the improvements from that method of looking at what went wrong and trying to improve it were small. They then worked with watching a video of their previous performance, spotting what went well, where they excelled, and then trying to do more of that, and the improvements were much greater. I'm simplifying it, of course, to some degree, but that's the basic nuts and bolts of this study, is that if you focus on what's not working and try and work to improve it, which is quite a traditional way of working to improve your skills, then the results you'll get are less than if you focus on what you're doing really well and work to improve that. My suspicion is we need a little bit of both, but most of the time we're focused very much on the first one and not so much on the second. So my sense is, organisationally, most organisations could do with focusing more on appreciation and appreciating what's going well and working to grow that, and less on where the problems are. So that's the second piece, is this research study around sports and improving performance. So the last one I find really fascinating is called the Pygmalion study. It's been done a number of times with different groups. And basically, again, this is a simplified version, but basically the way that works is you take a bunch of students and you assign them random places in the class, from top performer to worst performer in kind of 3 bands. So here's the high achievers, here's the guys who are doing okay, and here's the guys who are underachieving. You assign them random places in that order, and you bring in a teacher that's never worked with them before, and you give that teacher that report of where they sit in the class ranking as if it's fact. And within 6 months, the children will be performing within their bands of performance, regardless of how they were actually performing before the study was initiated. So what I found fascinating, and in some ways slightly scary about that, is other people's expectations of me can shape how I perform, not just my expectations of myself. So it's not even just about where I focus my attention, it's about where the people around me focus their attention in relation to me as well. So if I'm a manager, even if a member of my staff is really doing their best to be positive and appreciative and focus their attention in the direction of growing what's good, if I have negative expectations of them, that can shape how they perform. That's what this study seems to suggest. So the power of us to influence others, not just ourselves but others, is massive. And when we combine those two things, that I can influence the way I experience the world a lot, through our interactions and our conversations we can influence how each other about how we experience the world, and then even just in our expectations of each other we can influence how we perform. You know, that's a massive, to me that's a massive wake-up call to really bring some attention to how I interpret the world, the kinds of conversations that I choose to have, and to focus on appreciating what's working well, appreciating each other, seeking first to expect good things of someone rather than waiting for them to screw up again, to always be trying to see the world with new eyes, and those be appreciatively focused eyes, to always be seeking to see the good. Of course, we can't be blind to what's not working. We can't afford to be blind to that. But if we can shift our focus at least a little towards positive expectation, appreciating what's working well, and gratitude in some ways, I guess, then these bodies of research seem to suggest that we'll get better results. So I hope that helps you make some more sense of compassion circles and how they work, and perhaps provide some compelling things to think about in terms of why this work is so important and how much it could really pragmatically help.